Hey, how are you? I'm SliceofOtaku, and with this video, I want to talk to you about Connie, but more specifically, the path her character seems to have been set to follow lately. Now, with Steven Universe, we've bared witness to the development of many characters. Whereas Steven has gone from really childish and oblivious to now being more aware and mature, while still being the same kind-hearted kid we all know and love, Connie has always been the more mature of the two, and despite her age, often serves to be the voice of rationality honed in on the objective at hand, which is something that I think most of us have always appreciated about her character. And you know, I remember when I was first getting into the fandom, and people would tend to say that if Connie were in Steven's situation, we would have far more of our questions answered, and the show would readily provide a feeling of plot progression rather than the stagnation we've come accustomed to, which I can't argue with. Connie tends to get the job done, but ultimately, she is still human, and in this case, I'm not aiming to devalue her contribution due to her species, but rather as a reminder that she doesn't necessarily always have the right answers. For instance, in regards to the falling out Connie had with Steven over him turning himself over to Homeworld, I of course understand why Connie was so upset with Steven. They had trained and prepared for these sorts of situations. But there is a very big difference between practice and actual execution. And certainly Steven's decision making here was a risky play that put him in danger, but what would the alternative have looked like? Seriously, let's think about it. Let's say that Steven and Connie managed to fuse while on board Aquamarine's ship, and Stevani were able to bubble the Topaz gems and Aquamarine. What then? Would they just sweep the whole thing under the rug and hope that adding yet another red flag wouldn't set Homeworld off because all the others hadn't? Because at that point, even if we were to disregard all the miscellaneous low-ranking Homeworld gems that had already been lost when placed on Earth-related missions, we would then still have a total of 4 missing elite gems. And come on, we all know by now that Yellow Diamond is nothing to mess with, and was willing to send a full platoon of rubies to recover Jasper. If she were to lose 2 more of her elites that she appointed to this planet, that would be yet another case of unexplained L's on her name, which is something I think we can all agree that she wouldn't be a big fan of. Alright, so bubbling them is a no-go. Well, then okay, what if Stevani gave them a thrashing and they headed back to Homeworld empty-handed? Yeah, I don't think I really have to explain why that is a horrible scenario. And oh yeah, bonus points, had they fused to form Stevani, their gem would be showing, which is all it took for Steven to convince Aquamarine as to who he was. And even if for some reason or another Aquamarine and Topaz went back to Homeworld without saying a single word, Eyeball had already been recovered, and knew of Rose's existence in the form of Steven, so yeah, at the end of the day, Steven made the best choice by giving himself up. Which of course Connie couldn't have known, so I don't fault her or anything, but it goes to show just how delicate these matters can be and why combative maneuvers aren't always the best move. Now, training is something that Connie definitely takes seriously, and during her initial lessons with Pearl, servitude was instilled within her. In the end, she vowed to fight alongside Steven rather than stepping in front of the danger alone, but with that in mind, I don't think that alone could rid her of her objective nature. You see, when it comes to problem solving, Connie takes an entirely different approach than Steven would. She is nowhere near as patient with others and is prone to seeing a single solution to the issues she encounters. So in a sense, going from Steven to Connie, you trade up a bit of creativity for more maturity and rationalization. With the episode Jungle Moon, we see Stevani do things that Steven would never do by his lonesome. When it came to slicing that insectoid alien in half, that wasn't necessary at all, as Steven has taken on far more menacing gem creatures without shattering them, which frankly is the equivalent of Stevani cutting the creature in 2 before even knowing it could survive regardless. And for the sake of protein, Connie was willing to kill and eat a hatchling, which, to be fair, as a consumer of meat products in a country where the food industry has been so heavily industrialized, for me to criticize her point is rather hypocritical, but I digress. With all of this in mind, I think that there are more than enough inklings already present within the story to justify a potential ideological clash between Steven and Connie over how to handle a particular situation, or multiple situations. And yeah, I suppose the two of them having issues again would be a bit played out by now, but as we've seen with Lars's pitiful display in Lars of the Stars, it seems like the crew has no issue with character reversion or further exploring the same issue. But in this case, I think that we could receive a bit of a parallel to Rose's situation with Bismuth. You see, with the various Rose Quartz related revelations the trial provided, it seems as though Steven has gotten past believing that Rose shattered Pink Diamond. But I don't think he's quite resolved his feelings towards Bismuth, to which he feels a lot of regret and confusion towards. With mindful education, Steven's guilt was aimed towards Jasper, Eyeball, and Bismuth, and once again, with the trial, I think he's gotten over the whole Eyeball thing by seeing her and such. But there are still of course the cases of Jasper and Bismuth. Jasper, whom we love over here, but we know her situation to be a bit more troublesome as it requires a curing of corruption to handle. But with Bismuth, all it would take to bring her back would be unbubbling her. But Steven would have to know how to handle her going forwards, and maybe having a similar issue with Connie and reflecting on that would allow for him to progress and have a better idea of how to handle the situation. And to be fair, it is a very difficult situation for a new leader to be put in, but it is a necessary one. A common goal is one thing, but there are just so many possible ways to reach the same destination that it is important to keep those who follow you in line, or you risk losing them forever. But yeah, I'm sure you all have a lot you'd like to say about this subject, so please educate us all in the comments. Also, what do you think Steven would do if Connie decided to shatter Homeworld gems? Because he can't exactly bubble her like Bismuth. I can't wait to read your responses, but with that, thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.